Hi there, I'm Vincent and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing dumper tests. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing dumper tests. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you are likely to be tested by your ex. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 dumper tests that you might encounter. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is the unblock test. So this is something which comes about, not unsurprisingly, from the point number 1 title, but from the position of if you as a dumpee have been blocked by your ex the dumper. Now if you've been blocked by your ex, this is of course not an ideal position to try and get your ex back from. But I know of many instances of where a dumpee has been blocked by their ex, and within the future months, or maybe beyond, do reconnect with their ex. And the way this takes place is their ex, the dumper, has to unblock them first, then reach out, and then reconnection can take place. So when we consider point number 1 and the unblock test, this is when your ex, the dumper, will unblock you, but not necessarily send a message at that very moment that they did the unblocking. So if we're to consider the position that you and your ex, you've obviously broken up unfortunately, and your ex, the dumper, has blocked you. Let's just say they blocked you on numerous social media. And you perhaps are a type of dumpee that keeps checking on your ex's social media to see if you've been unblocked. Probably you're expecting it will never happen. And then suddenly one day, you check out their social media and you see the signs which suggest that you are no longer blocked. You're over the moon, you're excited, you're ecstatic. You can't believe that this day has come. But then you realise that you haven't actually received a message. Yes, your ex has unblocked you, but no, they haven't sent you a message. And this will leave you confused. And this is a fairly common position that dumpees find themselves in. Even though I strongly suggest that you don't check your ex's social media, many dumpee find it very, very difficult to abide by this suggestion that I make. They find it very hard to resist checking their ex's social media. And even if they've been blocked, they find it hard to stop checking. They don't want to stop checking, they want to find out if they're ever unblocked. And sometimes, like I've just said, this situation will occur. A dumpee checks the social media, can't believe their eyes, they're unblocked, but then are really surprised because they haven't received a message. Why have they unblocked me but not sent me a message? And this is where point number 1, the unblock test, comes into play. And this is often done by a dumper to see how you will react to this situation. Now, of course, they don't know for certain that you're going to find out that you've been unblocked. They don't know for certain that you're checking their social media, but they probably have a firm and actually accurate guess that you probably are doing. Now, I'm not saying that every dumper is doing this for a precise test to see how you react, but certainly it is the case in some instances. Sometimes a dumper will unblock their dumpee simply because they're now starting to feel more comfortable that their ex, the dumpee, is unlikely to try and bombard them. And actually, they themselves as a dumper wants to reach out to their dumpee, but they can't think exactly what to put yet. So they've unblocked them, but haven't yet decided what to type. And maybe they'll be doing this in the coming days or weeks or maybe months. Now, either way, whether or not this is a deliberate test or whether this is a position that the dumper just wants to unblock their dumpee and then consider in the future what to type to them, the last thing most dumpers will want is to receive contact from their dumpee. Yes, the dumper has opened the door, but they're not expecting the dumpee to run through it. Instead, they are hoping that the dumpee will respect their position as somebody who has ended their relationship. A dumper has ended a relationship because they want to go on their own path. And whether or not they said it literally, they want you to leave them alone during this time where they go on their journey and you go on yours. So irrespective of if they've unblocked you, they don't want you to be messaging them. Or at least a very, very high percentage of dumpers would not want their dumpee to be sending that first message. You've got to consider the fact you've been dumped in the first place does suggest that you were behaving in a needy and obsessive way, and they felt the only way to stop this was to block you. So if you was doing this in the first place, the last thing you want to be doing is falling for the trap, falling for the test, and actually reaching out to your ex-dumper before they reach out to you. Now, of course, there's no guarantee that your dumper will reach out to you. Maybe it was something they considered, changed their mind, and unfortunately never go back upon, but remain and leave the door open. But perhaps you are in that situation where your ex-dumper was and is going to reach out to you in the coming days or weeks, but they haven't yet decided what to put. So if they've blocked you for being needy, and then they find out that as soon as this door's been open, you're messaging them, they are very unlikely to be happy about this. You have failed the test. You have failed the test which represents whether you can handle the situation. Are you going to be behaving too needy and desperate? Are you going to be behaving in a way where you don't respect their decision? They've blocked you because they don't want to communicate. Yes, they've unblocked you, but how do you even know about this? Without obsessing over them and checking every single day, there's no way you could know. If the fact that you know and you've reached out to them, that shows the dumper that you're checking every day to find out if you're unblocked. So this is a very serious test, and a test that you need to pass. So if you're a dumpee, my first piece of advice is don't check your ex's social media. And my second piece of advice is if you find out that you've been unblocked, this doesn't mean you can reach out to your ex, because in most instances, if you've been dumped, you should never contact your ex again, unless they contact you first. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about dumper tests. And point number 2 is the text test. Now the text test is when your ex-dumper reaches out to you. So this is the moment that most dumpees are looking for. This is the most exciting moment where you have completed my version of a no contact rule. If you implement my version of a no contact rule, if you never contact your ex again unless they contact you first, and then you receive that contact, you have completed my version of a rule. And congratulations, that is a huge step on your road towards getting your ex back. You haven't got them back yet, but it is a huge step. And now you move into the communication stage. So you've received that text, but what happens now? Well, this is the text test. And this is the situation where your ex-dumper will send you a text and they'll be seeing how you react to it. Now, what this means is that they've sent you a message and they're going to be expecting you to respond. Now, most dumpers, although they're expecting you to respond, they're not expecting you to respond 2, 3, 4, 5 times before they message you again. I always like to describe this as a game of tennis. They hit the ball over the net, you hit it back, you can't hit it again unless they hit it back to you. That is how texting should take place. So if your ex-dumper texts you, congratulations, you're in a communication stage. But once you respond, you can't send another message until they message you back. And this might be a long time. You know, it might not just be hours. It could be days, weeks, or months. It might get to the stage where you feel this has been disrespectful to you. And if they do reach out to you again, you're not even interested. You know, I'm not saying you should be happy for every moment of attention your ex-dumper gives you. I'm just saying that if you want to try to get them back, then double texting, triple texting, quadruple texting is not going to help you. If you receive a message, you send one back, then you send again, then again, then again, before you get a further response, this is going to show that you are failing the text test. You are not representing yourself in a way which is stable-minded. You're showcasing yourself as needy, desperate, and if you've been dumped and potentially even blocked previously for being needy, you're really not showing yourself in the best light. Even if you haven't, it's not the best light. But if you have, then it's showing that you haven't even changed. If you want to try to get your ex back, you have to show evolution. You have to show you're a version 2.0 of yourself. We have to understand and respect that the person that was dumped is not a good match for our ex anymore. And you need to evolve, you need to grow, you need to become a better person today than you were yesterday, and a better person tomorrow than you are currently today. This is your opportunity to get your ex back. If your ex-dumper sees you as exactly the same, or maybe even worse in certain instances like neediness, you are very unlikely to get that chance of reconnecting. Because yes, they've reached out to you. Yes, this is a positive sign, but no, at this moment, you haven't got your ex back. There's work to be done, and you need to be passing these tests so you can get to the point where you meet your ex and hopefully reconnect on stronger, firmer foundations. Now, if you would want advice and support on how to increase the chance of getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about dumper tests. And point number 3 is the lifestyle test. Now this is often the biggest test of them all, the biggest challenge. Maybe you've passed the unblock test, maybe you were never blocked and this wasn't something you had to overcome. You certainly would have had to overcome the text test. Okay, some of you may have not been reached out to via a text or a message. Maybe some of you was reached out to via a call, or maybe even fewer of you were actually connected with in person. But ultimately, the way you navigate those moments are still tests. If your ex-dumper was to call you, they're going to be monitoring and seeing how you speak, how you sound, how you communicate, how you listen. If they see you face to face, they're going to be seeing how you react, body language, attitude. So whether or not the text test is precisely what you've gone through, you've definitely gone through a test regarding initial communication. But then we get to the lifestyle test, and this is often when we can see if there is a chance of getting your ex back, because your ex-dumper has likely changed and evolved and grown themselves, but not necessarily in a way that you would have been quote-unquote happy about. Now what I mean by this is that sometimes a dumper becomes a dumper because they don't feel they can live the life they want to within your relationship. For instance, they might want to do a hobby, spend time with friends, an activity. They might want to do something that you're not entirely happy with. Maybe because it takes up a lot of time in your opinion. Maybe it's because they're doing things you just don't feel comfortable with, spending time with people you're not happy with. Whatever it is, there might be situations that your ex-dumper feels that they need to be doing and living that they knew they couldn't within the relationship. So perhaps that's why they ended the relationship. And what you might find out that when you're communicating again is that your ex-dumper might passively tell you about a new lifestyle that they enjoy, and they will be seeing how you react. So for instance, maybe you have said to them in the past you don't like the thought of them doing this type of hobby or activity, and they passively tell you that they're really enjoying doing that. And they know that you don't like it, and they're wondering how you're going to react. Now maybe this isn't something that was discussed, maybe this isn't something that was actually fundamentally spoke about between you both. However, your ex-dumper might be thinking, I know my dumpee inside and out. I don't know how they'll feel if I tell them I'm now doing this, that or the other. I don't know how they will feel when I tell them I'm spending time with this person or that person. I'm doing this hobby or that activity. They might have an inkling that you're not going to like this, even if you haven't spoke about it before. So when they passively mention it, when you're discussing, okay, what have you been up to? What do you do nowadays? Oh, well, I do this on a Thursday night. Okay, they're waiting to see your response. Because if they really like this lifestyle, if they really enjoy doing what they're doing, seeing who they're seeing, then they're going to be judging how you react. And if you react badly, this could be the end of a connection before it even fully reformed. This would be you failing the test. Now, I'm not saying that you even want to pass this final test, because at the end of the day, if you truly are uncomfortable about something your ex-dumper is doing, maybe they're no longer the right person for you. Maybe you've grown in different directions and you are no longer compatible, and perhaps right now at this moment you actually see what your ex-dumper thought about all those weeks and months ago when they ended a relationship. You might now see and understand that you two don't fit together like you once did because they really want to do this, that or the other, and you really feel uncomfortable if they do. If they do this, you're going to be unhappy. If they don't do this, they're going to be unhappy. What we can see here are deal breaker life goals, so to speak, where one of you is going to be unhappy. So unless you truly, genuinely feel okay about this, I'm not even saying that you need to pass this test, but if you don't pass it, then the relationship cannot reform. So maybe this is a relationship which can be rebuilt upon and grown, or maybe at this stage you realise that sadly it can't. I'm not saying that you have to agree with this, but what I am saying is if you don't, you're very unlikely to see your ex again if you've met up, or even see them at all if you haven't yet. Your ex-dumper is going to test you with a lifestyle test. They're going to see how you react to the way they live their life right now. And similarly, you're probably going to be living your life slightly differently than when you two were together, and you will say your piece and we will see how they react. This is why I say that this is a new relationship. If you get your ex back, this isn't a continuation of your past connection. This is a new relationship which is hopefully built on stronger foundations. But if you want to achieve that goal of getting back together, you will need to pass these tests, and some that I haven't even had time to mention today. But you need to make sure that you truly want to pass the tests. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.